Why did Sri Lanka allow Chinese nuclear missile tracking ship to dock? How should India deal with this? Should India stop helping Sri Lanka? Knowledge Seeker says, why are we so weak that a rival nation can send its military ship to a port of our neighboring country close to our nation, and we are just angry with the neighboring nation, which is kind of like betraying us even after giving aid? Why are we or our government so unwilling to address this issue intelligently? All right. So the Chinese want to send a missile tracking ship, a spy ship, electronic measures ship, etc., signals, electronic signals tracking ship to Sri Lanka, to the Hambantota port. Let's see where it is. They want to send it there. They have not sent it there yet. They have not docked the ship there. So where is Hambantota? Somewhere in the south of the country. Where is it? Where is it? Here it is. This is Hambantota. This is a port that is essentially owned by the Chinese, given a bit to the Chinese by the previous corrupt Sri Lankan government. All Sri Lankan governments are more or less corrupt, essentially. So right now, Sri Lanka is going through a crisis. India is helping Sri Lanka. India is providing a long and massive line of credit, and India is sending various, food grains, etc., or maybe diesel, petrol, whatever, to Sri Lanka to help them tide over this crisis. There's a new government that's come into place. Ranil Wickremesinghe is the new leader in Sri Lanka. He is another stooge of the West. If you look at his history, you will know that. I will not go into the details right now. So the Chinese want to send a spy ship, electronic tracking ship to Sri Lanka. And this ship is extremely sophisticated, very good technology. It can track missile launches and rocket launches very precisely. So let's say India wants to launch some kind of ship. ISRO is sorry, not ship, rocket. Let's say ISRO wants to launch some rocket. ISRO launches a rocket. This ship can track it from very far away, from all the way south in the southern part of Sri Lanka. The ISRO launching place is somewhere in Orissa, right? Vishakhapatnam, somewhere in this region, somewhere in the eastern part of India, Orissa, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand kilometers from Hambantota. So the Chinese, through this ship, will be able to track that rocket launch. Let's say we are launching a new kind of rocket, which we did today, a tiny rocket. So the Chinese, if they have a ship in this region, they can track it and they can kind of decode what this rocket is about, what is new about it, what is different about it, what are the new capabilities that the Indians have acquired or built. Similarly, if India is to launch a ballistic missile, an intercontinental or intermediate range ballistic missile from the eastern coast of India, then this Chinese ship in Sri Lanka will be able to track it and monitor the missile launch and give the Chinese a great deal of very good intelligence about the characteristics and parameters and capabilities and range of the new ballistic missile that India is testing. So that is what the Chinese are doing. So they have requested the Sri Lankans to allow this Chinese spy ship to dock in the Hambantota port. Initially, the Sri Lankan government agreed to this, and that's why there was this uproar in Indian media. The latest thing I've heard is that the Sri Lankans have said, we are giving you permission, but after so and so date. So I don't know what that date is, and I don't know if there is some event coming up in India around that date. So the Sri Lankans are giving permission, but after a certain date. I'm sure the Indian Ministry of Foreign Affairs is in constant contact with the Sri Lankans, and India would have made certain things clear to Sri Lanka. So that is the situation right now. They have been given permission to dock, but after a certain date, and maybe there's something coming up in India, some kind of missile launch or some test or something, which I am not quite sure what it is, but it may be there. There could be something coming up. So that's the deal. Now the question is, how should India deal with this? India should make it very clear to Sri Lanka that this sort of behavior is not acceptable. That's for sure. Should India stop helping Sri Lanka? You see, in international affairs, in geopolitics, all help is conditional. Like I've said many times, there are no friendships in geopolitics. The Indian government has a singular purpose: to serve the nation and its people and to further India's national interest. That is the only purpose of the Indian government. Indian money, whatever it is the government has at its disposal, is to be used for these purposes only. Now, if India is giving aid to Sri Lanka, financial aid, monetary aid, other aid, there has to be some reciprocity. It has to be conditional aid. The aid we are giving to a foreign nation, Sri Lanka is currently a foreign nation for now. It's a separate country, it's a separate government and separate people. So if we are giving aid to Sri Lanka, it has to have certain conditions, that you will not do this or that or whatever. There have to be very clear conditions. And in case the Sri Lanka, so in case the Sri Lankans doing are taking actions or steps that are detrimental to India's national interest, the aid should be immediately cut off, and there should be further action which could essentially ensure that Sri Lanka doesn't indulge in such activities again. Right? Um, so is Sri Lanka betraying us? No, they're not betraying us. They're testing us. There are no betrayals in geopolitics. There are U-turns, and the public can consider that to be a betrayal, but actually it is nothing but a standard geopolitical maneuver. Yeah, a so-called betrayal. The Sri Lankans are testing the limits of where they can go vis-a-vis India. They are currently dependent on India. India is giving them all this aid. They still want to see how far they can go without before the Indians get upset and they stop the Sri Lankans. So they are testing India. The government that is currently in power is this guy Vikramasinghe is a Western stooge. He is a member of various well organizations that will demonstrate his credentials as a time tested Western stooge. So that's what the Sri Lankans are doing. Now the thing about, I can understand why people get upset. People get upset that India is helping another nation and India is getting nothing in return. They are betraying us. Um, is India not intelligent? Is India helpless? Why are we helping people for nothing? Uh, the thing is this: India is now definitely emerging as a major geopolitical power, and yet India is not able to control certain countries in its neighborhood. Sri Lanka is now coming to heel for sure, but there are other nations in India's neighborhood that India is still not able to influence to the extent that it would like to influence. The question you have to ask yourselves is this. Let's take a look at the Indian territory. Yes, let's remove this. This is the geographical extent of the present day nation state of India. How many portions within India's territorial boundaries is the Indian government able to control completely? There are certain regions where there are problems. There are problems. There are so many. See, people talk about a 2.5 front war. What they mean is that India's main enemies are within India. There are so many actors, let's say, within India's own territory that are on the payroll of foreign governments and who are serving the national interests of other nations. This is known to everyone. And we know the nations that are funding these various actors and elements within Indian territory. A nation like India or any other nation can become geopolitically influential only when it deals with the internal threats first. Right? Take a look at China. Why is China so influential in its neighborhood? Because they have quelled all internal problems. There are lots of elements, let's say, within China that would like to see China as in its present state to be broken up. And there are legitimate interests. When we talk about Tibet, Tibet doesn't belong in China. When we talk about Manchuria, you may not know this, but Manchuria should not be Chinese territory. The Chinese have taken over half of Mongolia. So there are many forces within China that would legitimately like to see the Chinese nation broken up because it's taken over so many foreign territories. But the Chinese have quelled all that internal dissent. There is the writ of the Chinese Communist Party is supreme within the Chinese territory. And that's why they're able to be so influential externally. When it comes to Russia, there are lots of these Western stooges within Russia. I will not take names, but there are such people. Those have been, let's say, their actions have been kind of neutralized by the Russian government. You can call it despotism, dictatorship, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. But practically, they have been able to neutralize those foreign forces within Russia. And that's why Russia is so geopolitically influential externally. The US, it doesn't tolerate dissent internally. It talks about democracy and human rights and freedom of expression and all that, but anybody who speaks, who takes actions that are detrimental to US national interests within the nation, will be immediately dealt with extraordinarily harshly. So you have to first take complete control of your own territory and quell all anti-national elements and forces. Once you do that, you will automatically become powerful geopolitically. So India has a lot of internal friction, internal problems. Once that is dealt with, when everybody is on board with the national interest, right now lots and lots of forces within India are working against India's national interests. Once that is dealt with, India will automatically be orders of magnitude 10 times, 100 times more influential than it is right now. So that is the real problem that we are facing in India, right? So that's the deal with the Chinese spy ship in Sri Lanka.